Hello, and welcome to our weekly HudUniGames cast, coming to you from our home offices once again, normally from the University of Huddersfield. My name is Duke, and today I'm joined by Daryl and Matt, and we're going to talk through some of the final year submissions for Advanced Viz. But before that, let's roll the intro. Okay, so before we do any of that, of course, our weekly. Before we do any of that, has Daryl dyed his hair? Before we even get to any of the,
it's gone a bit mad. Frankly, it's kind of been bit. I don't know. Yeah, that's
has it gone insane in
that's
isolation?
A discussion for another day. Yeah,
I don't know. I think we should spend the next hour discussing Daryl's hair. Anyway, so
it all went a bit wrong.
Yeah. So no, back to the usual thing. I think we need to be doing the what's on the box.
Well, actually, before what's on the box.
Sorry, you're right.
We actually have a little bit of news that we wanted to share with everybody.
We do indeed. Go on, Matt.
So, Canalside Studios, Amira's Tale were just part of a feature in this month's Wireframe magazine. So you can actually go download the issue as a PDF from that URL there, wireframe.raspberrypi.org. Issue 39. There's a little article sort of breaking down this year's team and what they've been making, and it's really good news to sort of showcase what they've been doing. And they're also, Mira's Tale is going to be part of the Steam Game Festival this year as well.
I just asked a question about that as well. I'm not sure I got a proper answer to it. Was that completely student-led then?
The magazine, yeah. Josh did all that.
That's awesome.
That's
what the studio's all about, isn't it? Ultimately,
yeah. Wireframe reached out to them, and Josh took the lead on it. And
fantastic.
So it's really well done on them for reaching out and trying to get that social media sort of outreach going. And like I say, go on.
Probably say, as there's a big quote in the middle there, the most important thing to note is Canalside Studios is 95% run by us. Not us, them, the students.
0% run by me.
Yeah, but we're looking at recruiting for next year, and that's part of the conversation. It's very much a student-led environment. We're there to steer and facilitate, but where necessary. But it's very much about the students. In fact, Marcus is watching us as well. Marcus was in the studio. How many years ago for Pocket Galaxy? It's quite a while.
Gary was in the studio. Is
Gary in today? I don't know. Yeah, I haven't seen him yet. He'll be miffed if he misses what's on the box, won't he?
Yeah. But like I say, it's really nice for them and great marketing tool. But also, they're going to be part of the Steam Game Festival. So if you want to go and support them, go play the demo, tweet, Instagram, Facebook, whatever the kids are doing now in terms of pressing that like button. Please do that. We'll leave a link in the YouTube description if you're watching this on YouTube to go and give them some support.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. I forgot about that one. So, it is time for what's on the box.
Yes.
I think I have. Let me just try this a second. Does it still exist? No, it doesn't. No, it's when we moved from OneDrive to Dropbox. I think I forgot to bring the video. I was going to play a video for it, but never mind.
So before we move on to Watch the Box, I just want to make sure everyone knows what this week's session is going to be about. This live stream is that we're going to be going over the advanced visual design module. So we've done it a few times now. Last week we did the games prototyping. A couple of weeks earlier we did advanced 3D. We're going to have a look at some of the advanced viz submissions from this year. So don't go disappearing. I want to see that number increase, not go down.
Yeah.
So bit of fun before we start.
If it goes down,
we'll just quit. Just end the stream. Right. So let's see. I can't remember who's first.
It went down. It literally went down.
Only one. Who's first on our list? I think we know what what's on the box is. For those who are joining us, who've not been before or not joined us before, we will take it in turns at reading out the back of a game, the rear text. Sales pitch, and then it's up to the rest of us to guess and join in on Twitch. We'll see what kind of guesses we have. So first is Daryl's first. Are you ready?
Yeah, is the font going to be big enough for me to read this week? Yeah.
Here we go.
So, as American tourist, you're enjoying some refreshment at a stylish Parisian cafe. Suddenly, the entire shop is engulfed in a fiery explosion. You narrowly escape, and so begins your epic adventure of international mystery and intrigue. Good. That was the reaction I wanted.
American tourists.
Don't look at the chat.
enjoying
Someone's going to get this.
Enjoying some refreshment. Oh, I know what it is. We were talking about it literally yesterday.
Oh, damn you.
What? Go on.
Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
I just assumed you hadn't actually twigged what it was.
Yeah, it was
Damn you.
It was the Parisian cafe gave it away.
Go on then. The Spider-Man?
No, go on, Duke. You know, got any clues?
No.
Can you get the right one though, Matt?
Any clues in the chat?
Anyway, Spider-Man Far From Home. Wasn't that in Paris? Or near?
Eventually.
No, or Italy, was it? Don't
Yeah,
remember.
but this is a game, not a film.
I know, but you know, they always make rubbish games out of films, don't they?
I'm going. It's Broken Sword.
I want the full name.
Broken Sword. Temple or something? I can't remember what the
That one.
Shadow of the Templars.
I knew it was something Temple.
Broken Sword 1 is what I've always referred to it as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great game, actually. Really good.
I haven't played for a long time. But barely any memory.
I've
So who's
got
next?
I've got Broken Sword 5, which I've been.
Oh, there is the PlayStation copy. Oh, yeah. I might.
Matt, you're next. Oh, I forgot to do the
Not
timer.
aged either. The beauty of Broken Sword is because the graphics were so crisp, except for resolution, the graphics haven't really aged.
Okay. You ready? Matt.
Okay. So you've finally been granted your blank trainer's license.
It's Pokemon.
Now it's time to head out and become the world's greatest trainer. It's going to take you all you collect in this enormous world, catch and train like it's shockingly cute, face off against torrential water cannons, stand strong when facing stormy gusts, trade with friends, and watch your evolve.
It's got to be Pokemon.
Now,
Are you asking specifically
which
one?
now,
Are we going to do a Daryl here?
which one? Because as everyone in the chat will attest, is that it's very important which one you are part of.
No, it's not.
It is. It is. It's,
Only to people who play Pokemon games.
Yes.
Which
generation?
The torrential water cannons and the stormy gusts.
Yeah, that's the bit. That's the bit that's going to give it away, and it's very important because depending which generation of Pokemon you are means
because
what type of gamer you are.
It's three letters in your stars. So can it be the one with cats or dogs in?
Red. It's red. It has to be red, doesn't it? No, I don't know.
What's the chat say?
Pokemon, blue, red, gold, pink, orange.
Somebody
Puce.
Ash said dogs.
Pokemon Puce. I'm going to go with Pokemon Puce.
Nintendogs on the Switch.
Someone's got
That's
it there.
Reese.
Someone's got it in the chat.
Which one? Nintendogs.
No, the one above it.
Oh, first gen.
Is it Digimon?
There you go. Click. First generation.
Oh, sorry. Right, yeah. I've never played the Pokemon games.
But it's
the-
first gen.
What's
Red
the
and blue.
one?
I did say red and blue and Puce and many other things.
What's the one at Niantic?
Pinky shade of Movie Russet.
And it's specifically red because it says Blastoise's torrential water cannons as your foe. And if you have the blue one, it says Charizard's Fiery Fire Blast or whatever it was. I can't remember what it actually says.
Okay.
But yeah, first generation, very important. And I've just noticed in the chat, hi Muzzy. If that is Muzzy from several years ago.
I was wondering that.
Hi.
It says been a while. That would suggest it's been a while. Onwards anyway. So what's on my box? It's quite long, this.
Oh God.
Yeah. One of the longest running hits in video game history. It's picking up right where you left it at the arcade, so it gives you a bit of a clue, I suppose. Terror at every turn, tire slashes, smoke screens, oil slicks, torpedoes, bomb-dropping helicopters. Standing in your way of the most diabolical collection of enemy agents ever to hit the video screen. Now, this is the best bit. Check out the graphics. Those explosive sound... When you realise what game this is, that's brilliant. Those explosive sound effects and the most incredibly manic action you've ever seen. I don't think it was. Try to tell yourself you're not really shooting to kill, that the hope of the entire free world isn't riding on your every move, that it's all just a game. Then we've
Well, a
got you.
racing game, obviously.
Yeah, we want
but,
you.
I don't.
Oh, don't check the chat. Wow, that was quick.
I was thinking, if it's the bottom one, I was thinking Spy Hunter. If it is Spy Hunter, but it depends. Spy Hunter. I'm trying to think. I can only think of the really bad, like film version that, like I think The Rock or someone was in, and then they made a video game version of it. I presume it's older than that. And actually, that was a
this
remake.
is 80 something. Long. I don't know if The Rock was born then. I don't know how old he is actually.
I was thinking it doesn't have all of those bits and pieces. I can't remember the name of the damn game either. The one that was, I don't think it was ever on anything else, but it was in the arcade. They got it at Arcade Club. The one where you where the jet comes above you and drops the upgrades onto your car as you're driving. You pick up these sort of like fuel pellets as you're driving. It's clearly not that. I have no idea what this is. It's random racing game number 4.
Whoever Kung Fuchi is.
Let's go with Carmageddon because
that's the version I was thinking of. Spy Hunter Nowhere to Run that stars The Rock on PS2.
Really? Well, the one I was bringing up was the NES version of Spy Hunter.
Oh my god!
Which I would encourage. Hi, Kieran. I would encourage anyone or everyone to look up on YouTube Spy Hunter NES and then reread the check out the graphics bit.
They are pretty nice graphics. There's some dithering going on.
There are many pixels.
Yeah.
There's at least
5 pixels in there. 30
for a car.
Yeah.
And a full 8 colours. So yeah. Win.
Yeah, it's lovely. Do you think the modern games, like Unreal Engine 5, where we're saying, oh, it's so real, it's amazing. Do you think in, 80 something, so another 30, 40 years, we'll look back at Unreal Engine 5 with the same humour?
Of course we will.
Yeah.
It's inevitable.
It's like when we look back at the PS1 now and you just go, that doesn't look like anything other than a smear of colour.
But what's scary about that thought, though, is the jump between Spy Hunter in the 80s and Unreal Engine 5 now. What is the jump between Unreal Engine 5 and 20, 30 years, 40 years from now?
Something beyond realism. Something beyond realism.
Beyond real.
Ultra real, yeah.
I think we should brain games. Reese says brain games.
Yeah, it would be something like AR projected into the real world and you don't know the difference.
Yeah. Anyway, should we move on before we get down that rabbit hole? So, Matt, I guess you need to lead us on this, Advanced Viz.
So, yeah, Advanced Visual Design. It's sort of a little. It's very similar in terms of its outputs in like as Advanced 3D. So we've looked at those in a couple of weeks ago, where we had some characters, some environments, some vehicles, but it kind of delves a little bit deeper into the more researchy side, the same way that Prototyping 3 does. So instead of for Prototyping 3, you're researching into sort of tools and development and production things, whereas for Advanced Visual Design, you research into visual narratives, looking at how visual elements can communicate to a player, how you actually go about making sure that something is reading the correct way. So looking at complexities of color theory, compositional theory, looking at how you would actually go about designing something to actually have some kind of meaning behind it, if we're going to go into the deeper end. But at its core, as you can see here, when we look at the things that I asked for the students, you have the final product, you have a sketchbook that is breaking it down and explaining exactly not only how you made it, but why you made it and the reasons, the choices that you made through the process. A little bit of a research journal, which is sort of breaking down a really complex part of the production. So if you're doing a character, let's say you're going to look at hair or skin development and how that shader development was produced. And then the portfolio, what will this thing look like in your portfolio? So not only the final renders, but a video trailer showing it off. So you could put all of these together in a portfolio and get a really nice sort of outcome from this. So
just to elaborate on that, I mean, the sort of the differentiation that we always make between the two modules is the fact that there is a focus on the process and the procedure and the writing in this module, the justification of what you've done, why you've done it. How you went about doing it is common to both, but the justification. So this has a more academic spin, whereas the advanced 3D module tends to be more towards strictly sort of portfolio development and anchoring yourself in the real world, looking at sort of like what's required in industry.
Yeah.
Carry on, Matt, anyway.
No. It's essentially exactly it. Is that when we try and sometimes students don't quite understand the difference between when they go, oh well, I'm just about making a portfolio piece for both advanced 3D and for advanced visual. Is that yes, you are, but you're making them for two different reasons. You're outlining them in two different ways,
Yeah.
and you're sort of demonstrating two separate approaches to the same production technique. So you're still producing a character or an environment at the end of it, but you're going about it in two different ways. That's what we're trying to push out of these two modules.
I think a simple, very simplistic way of looking at it is you're trying to please two separate audiences to some degree with the output. You are trying to please an academic in the broadest sense in advanced viz, and you are trying to sort of, promote your work towards somebody from industry, from advanced 3D. And I think because the modules have always been quite similar, that is something that Matt and I have kind of evolved with those modules, trying to create some clear blue water between them.
Yeah. Now I think the next slide sums it up quite well. So in advanced 3D is that it's a 3D module. You're going to be producing a 3D asset, whether it's character, environment, prop, vehicle, etc. And in advanced viz, you can do the same. If you're sort of tailoring your portfolio and your expertise a little bit towards either 3D character, environment, vehicle, prop, weapon, that's fine. But we also have a whole host of other different disciplines that that visual module can appeal to, and that's VFX artists, animators, UI, UX designers, concept artists, 2D production artists. We've had model makers and sculptors go through that module and sort of showcase that expertise. And then even in what you wouldn't naturally say is an art-based subject, but level design, producer, designer, is that you can actually tailor that module to actually be appropriate for them as well. So they can actually take the complexity of trying to demonstrate themselves as a designer, but in a visual, fun way. And that's going to be quite interesting to see some of the outputs that come from that. Like, for instance, the level designer a few years ago, we had someone make a Crash Bandicoot clone in UE4 and built all the assets and did all the blueprinting, did all the production, all the UI, all the character design. And that was really fun to see that development. So as we go through these, you'll see that some of them are very traditional, what you would expect to be art-based subjects, but some of them aren't. So we'll jump in to have a look at some of them. So first up is Reese, and Reese is one of those that again wants to be a sort of VFX technical artist, and he focused quite heavily on creating a VFX that would fit into a very specific genre. So this is sort of like your League of Legends, Dota sort of top-down power effect. So this is sort of like a projectile attack that you would find in League of Legends. And he went through a lot of iteration, and his sketchbook is really quite in depth. And it's probably one that I'll put up on Brightspace for next year's lot when they start, as an exemplar of how to break it down and show that iteration process and show actually how at each stage he's getting feedback on what's working and what's not, what's reading correctly. Are the colors appearing to pop from the background and actually interact with the characters, or are they blending in? So there's a lot of different technical processes that go in here. And actually in the video, you'll see it split into 4 at one point, and that is actually breaking it down. Is it efficient? How many draw calls is he using to actually render that VFX? Is it actually industry standard, industry ready as part of it? And throughout that, has he done that decision making at each stage to make changes and progress it forward? So Reese is a really good example of someone
I
who.
think Reese is a good example because it does tell us what we were talking about last time with Duke's module as well. I mean, we looked at Reese's work in depth there, and he's done more or less anything. He wants to be he's going to be a VFX artist. I've got no doubt, but he's really focused on that throughout his entire year. He's done it for every single project, and what we saw for Duke was very technical, and what he's done for you has got far more of a creative and artistic leaning. So I think this is clear that if a particular sort of interest in more technical process and technical art, this module is still capable of accommodating you.
Yeah. So it's a really nice balance if you're in that sort of mix of the technical side with the prototyping and then the more artistic side of the discipline with the visual advanced visual design module. Okay, so we're going to go on to the next, and we're going to go through these relatively quickly because I just want to show you a nice spread of submissions that came through. So next up is Nav, and on each of these, if I could find their portfolio, I'll just put it at the top as well, so you can go off and have a look at more of their work. And some of this you've already seen in Advanced 3D, but Nav is one of those that we talked about in Advanced 3D that is coming on leaps and bounds. Every single character that he does it better, and this is one that has its faults, has its shortcomings in terms of just the final polish of the face and things like that. But the entire development cycle that he put together in his sketchbook and his research journal show that he understands a character pipeline now from an industry perspective. The next stage for Nav is to go forward and make sure that his portfolio is demonstrating multiple characters at that high end. So I have no doubt as he continues to develop it and puts his portfolio together over the next over the summer, he'll do it extremely well. But this is a nice little character that shows lots of little props. The boots are really nice. He's got weapons. He's got this backpack. He's got hair in there that he's using hair cards. Made a skin shader. It needs a bit of work, but it's not bad at all.
I would say the primary thing that I see when I'm looking at that is just the sort of like the form, the silhouette. Not discounting all the props, the actual human form underneath it is just a little bit boxy and square and rigid, and needs a bit more sort of fluidity and elegance to it.
So it's again, we can see here we've got VFX, we've got some character stuff, and I think the next one up is an environment piece.
Yes.
So we've got Daniel Rusby here, who for me has really impressed me this year. I think he's finally found his little niche that he wants to try and get into environment art, and he's put together two really nice pieces. We showed one of his pieces off for Advanced 3D, and this one is another one that demonstrates that he's pushing that envelope towards something that is really good. So we can see he did the studio environment, and there's loads of little props. There's a lot of research that went into each of these props because he tried to make them as accurate to the originals as he could. Even the sound mixing desk, every single knob and dial is actually modeled correctly, which is really quite nice to see.
What era is this meant to be? Is that an Atari ST over on my desk?
I think so, yeah. So it is sort of... I don't know, Daryl, you were alive back then. What year was that?
I was out of my head most of it, mate.
Daryl was alive when they invented wood.
There's some really nice, interesting details in here. So he's actually got the sound booth behind the tinted glass there. And actually, if you look really closely, you can start to see actually there's an entire simplified music system in there. So there's drum kit, piano, keyboard, things like that. So that you can imagine if this was in a game engine, is that you'd want to see what was in that room. So if you looked really closely, you could just see that there are the hints of a music system. But it's even the little things like making sure that the wires are all correct on the mouse to the keyboard and things like that. So another good example of a student that's found, just like Nav has now found their niche and is slowly putting a portfolio together to demonstrate that.
Can I offer a tip for future people? Don't film, this capture of this scene. I'm trying to figure out, it looks like either a 12 or a 14mm lens that's been used to capture this.
I was literally going to say the same thing, yeah.
Look at that circular clock. which it clearly isn't circle, but obviously as it comes around to the
It's a
centre, the
circle for a
distortion,
while. Yeah.
the distortion is in all the way through. It stood out, I think, right when we get to this. I mean,
It's
not taking away from the scene.
It
This is
comes
just
to me. I'm starting to get an
that
Amiga now as well, not an Atari ST.
is
So I'm not
stretching.
entirely certain.
So shoot at like something more human, like 30mm, 35mm, and then I'm not taking away from the scene at all. I'm not querying anything about the scene, just the video capture of it. This is lovely. This is like a 50mm lens, maybe something like that. This is maybe a little wider, 30mm, but this is like a 12mm. It's really, for me anyway, it just makes my eyes hurt having such
I'd
wide
like to see
distortion
this
like that.
re-rendered to some degree with the ArcViz tools that are built into Unreal now. I'd like to see that extra bit of realism added to this. Yeah, you're totally right about the camera, though, Jude.
Cool. Onwards.
Some good feedback there. So this one we're gonna go quite quickly because you've all seen it twice now because it made a sneak appearance in Advanced 3D as we looked at Cal's portfolio, and it was one of the pieces that helped him win Game Republic Student Showcase the art prize, so the first place one. So this is what he did for mine, which was this dandy character, which is based on an anime. And he was trying to make it look, he was taking the anime character and he was translating it into a 3D movie version. I think the film that's coming out is called Lupin, I think it was called. And he wanted to match that style. So converting anime into that particular style. And he did an amazing job here, getting that personality of the dandy character across. And I think that was one of the key things that we spent quite a bit of time on in the early phases of this is getting that sort of quirky, cheeky, little bit of a know-it-all personality sort of coming through in not only the modeling but of the face and the features, but also in the pose and the materials and things like that. So he had a lot of reference to go off, but the translation is great. So I recommend everyone go and have a look at Cal's portfolio. And I think let me just have a look. I think he's actually got his sketchbook up there as well.
I think Gary's response to this particular portfolio was about right.
Yeah, so he's actually got his sketchbook up on his ArtStation as well. If you want to go and have a look at that sketchbook and look at that breakdown, it's hosted on Issue, so it's on the right hand side in his description. So a really nice example of translating one style into another, which is actually an artist's sort of skill that they have to develop over time. Is that when you go into the industry, when you go through university, you tend to have your own style and that you try and put into everything. But then when you go into industry, you have to match your style to someone else's, and that becomes a lot harder to sort of process.
Is Daryl just talking to himself?
I was just thinking that.
Yeah.
Sorry, my microphone was switched off. Right, sorry. I'll start again.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was thinking
I'm
it was my machine.
I'm a professional, a professional what?
I was like, is my machine going funny? Because Daryl's talking but to himself.
I'll start again. I have no idea what I was saying now. I've lost my thread completely. No. Matt's absolutely right there. The key thing is that is such an important factor. You never know what game I would say this so many times. I mean, everybody that's sort of a graduate will say, yeah, we've heard Daryl say that a million times, but you don't know what games you're going to be working on. You graduate, you go into industry, and they stick you on a project, and it has a defined art style. And you have to work to that art style. You can't be I'm an anime guy, or no, I'm a realism guy. You have to key into that, or you're on a road to nowhere, and you're going to find yourself having to look for another job. So you have to be basically fit into these different art styles all the time. My take on this is that what you should do is have the kind of work that you want to do in mind as far as taking either of our modules in final year, but approach that from the perspective of having a piece of concept work, and then I actually get my students to do this directly. Choose a piece of concept work, choose a specific art style, and stretch yourself. Do an art style you wouldn't normally do, and try and recreate that concept work in that particular art style so that you tick all of those boxes. And then you can demonstrate this afterwards. And you should have, as Kyle has in his portfolio, a real range of different visual styles that cross boundaries in all sorts of different ways. It's the ideal way to approach both modules, particularly if you want to be a character artist.
Exactly right. So let's move on to the next one. So as we can see, we've now gone from character to vehicle. So this is Ashley Pagett's vehicle concept. So I think anyone that's played Destiny will recognize this as a Destiny vehicle. I don't know what we call them. I'm going to call it a land speeder because it looks like a land speeder. But
I was going to say it looks like an updated speeder.
Yeah, but this is quite a nice. There's some problems with topology in the surface, but it's a nice transition. It's nice sort of matching of an art style and actually optimizing. So if you look at the wireframe, it's actually for a vehicle of this caliber, it's actually really well optimized. So this again is another example of a student looking at a particular concept. So this came directly from any sketchbook, looking at the original concept art piece for this vehicle, breaking it down, analyzing it, and building it up again. So obviously had a lot of reference from the game, but being able to actually match a particular style is really important. And a note to Ashley, I couldn't actually find your portfolio, so get that updated and let us know what it is so I can add it to the YouTube description box.
Cool. Just a note from Reese here about both of his art tests have been for realism VFX so far.
There you go. And he's actually he's focused on stylized so far, so he's having to adapt to match to a different style.
Yeah. Okay, so stupid machine. It's clearly not user error.
So this is where we really branch out in the advanced visual module, because David took this module, and if you ask David, is he an artist? He will laugh at you and say, no, I'm not an artist in any way, shape, or form. But at the same time, that's not what it's all about. It's about how do you communicate an idea? How do you communicate something across? So David spent a long time. He had this idea that he wanted to build a game that was also his portfolio, which was a really interesting concept. So as you played the game, you started off as an intern at a game studio, just making cups of coffee, and then you had to, you would say, oh, you can't become a designer until you've got 3 years of experience. So you would have to go into your stats and add 3 years of experience to your stat level. And things like that, and slowly you got tasks that were all based around what a portfolio, what you would need for an entry-level portfolio, and as you played the game, you got the requirements to actually enter it. So it was, how do you communicate that idea? How do you bring that across? And so he did a lot of technical stuff. He built it all using blueprints. He designed the little missions and little structures that you would do. And then we're getting near to the end of the year, we went, okay, we need that visual element now. We know you're not an artist, but how do you communicate all of that stuff that you want to communicate, but in a visual medium? And we joked around for a bit, and we had a bit of a chat conversation, and we came up with this idea of, well, you make notes in a sketchbook anyway. That's what you do. You're a designer, you're a producer, you make notes in a sketchbook. So let's say you've got a sketchbook and you've been ripping ideas out of like the Argus catalog and sticking them in and writing notes. So he went to town with that, and he actually went and got some catalogs, ripped them out, took some photos, and built the game and all the art assets out of that idea of, I ripped them out of magazines and stuck them in, and drawn little notes on them. So this is David's a really clear example of how advanced Viz isn't just about, can you make the best looking character or the best looking environment? It's, can you communicate an idea through a visual medium? And so anyone that's coming through from second year that's maybe not on the art spectrum but wants to actually tackle this module, that's what we're going to be looking at. There is definitely an art aspect to it, and you have to demonstrate that understanding of the art elements. But David's a good example.
Cool. And
so Gosia is next. So Gosia is an interesting one, because she found this really nice little concept and I should have put the actual concept art piece on here. Found this little 2D concept art and wanted to recreate it the same way that you would do in advanced 3D, but part of it was actually how do you take that sketchy sort of quality and actually bring it to 3D in terms of the elongated proportions and stuff like that. I think she did a really nice job of actually translating the concept. One thing that both me and Daryl said when we were moderating it was in the concept, the beard was actually really scruffy, and I think it was a little bit clean in the final shot. So she did
that thing of looking for the personality of the character, isn't it? And just getting all of those keys and cues coming through. And it's pretty close, but there are little elements that just need a little bit of extra finessing. It literally is, maybe to complete this to a really high standard, probably about a day's work.
Yeah, just tweaking some of those shapes and tweaking some of those sort of the way that you're presenting some of the key features. But like I say, I wish I'd put the concept on next to it because it was so close, translating from 2D to 3D.
I was going to ask if we had the concept, but
yeah, no, I should have put it on. But Gosia is another one that I couldn't find your portfolio online, so give us an updated link so we can add it into the YouTube.
Cool. And
who are we on next? Oh, that's a
that's a hell of a name he's got there.
Yeah,
I thought you checked your slides, dude.
I asked Duke to
Are they married?
how have you managed to get an extra O in there?
Yeah, so there we go.
Does he have a hyphen? I think he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He'll tell us if he
doesn't. So Kieran, this is one. He wanted to do a spaceship, and he looked at lots of interesting things, like from a technical perspective, like greebles for adding complex materials to a surface. He had looked at sort of design mechanisms for making surfaces look more detailed than they are. And he found this really nice little simple concept for a little fighter in the end. And the actual translation from the concept is pretty close to it. I think if we're going to really nitpick Kieran's and sort of go to town on it, it's the presentation of the final thing. Definitely needs some work. Because if he was going to be sort of focusing this towards a studio that makes space games like Your Elite Dangerous, Your Star Citizen, things like that, they really emphasize that final polish, that final, does it look like it's part of a film, essentially, in terms of that final render. So the underlying mesh for this is really, really strong. He just needs some extra work on those material properties. How do you render different types of metals, different types of surfaces? How do you make things read like they're in space? But Kieran is one of those that I think eventually will make it into a vehicle artist. He just needs to really push himself in terms of that final polish stage. He's really quite strong on that early development, and then kind of at the moment tapers down a little bit on that final polish.
Yeah, this is hard work. Keep hitting play on an 8-second video, especially when 4 seconds of it, if you watch the timer. We got to about 4 seconds with this long shot of the engines and the lens flares before we get into so there's only 4 seconds of actual bit of the ship.
Yeah. Now, Kieran, I need to apologize. I actually didn't put you do have an art station, and it is relevant, but I forgot to copy it in. So it will be in the YouTube link for anyone.
It wouldn't fit with your married name.
Yes. I thought I'd done that, but never mind.
Okay.
And then we're going to go through, we're going to show some the other ones. We've got Jason here, who did a sort of a Star Wars character. Now, this is one that, again, definitely needs that level of polish at the back end to present this. Things like, oh, thank you there, Kieran, for putting the link in the chat. Like the one thing that I always say for when I've looked at this one is that pose is really weird. It doesn't look natural. And when you're trying to do humanoid forms, is that it's got to look natural. It's got to look like the anatomy holds itself up. In terms of topology, fabric, materials, used Marvelous Designer in this, actually baked it down. There's actually some of the details are really nice. It's just that final level of polish. And I think one thing that we always do try and push in all of the modules is that you have to have that final stage coming together to actually build a portfolio piece. So I think Jason definitely could go back and do a couple of more iterations on the final polish of this, and he'd have a really nice portfolio piece.
Can I also point out, it would appear this video maxes out at 360p.
Yes.
So when somebody wanting to look at this detail, although there's the stuff on the left, but you need at least 1080, don't you? Just for another note, so we've got any first and second, take note. Don't use wide-angle lenses longer than 8 seconds, and in a decent resolution. And that's not even the bit you marked on.
I'm not going to read what Ols 232 has put in the chat.
Yeah,
but it did make me smile.
Made me laugh.
I was chuckling at that part of the chat. I'm not going to read it out.
Anyway, moving on.
Let's keep going. We've got quite a few of these that I want to get through because we had quite some really nice submissions this year. Jake again has improved drastically over the course of the year, putting together a nice little environment that he kind of spent quite a long time just trying to tell this little narrative of this loner in a hut and sort of the different elements that are part of it. Spent quite a long time rearranging the props so that they actually, from the different camera angles that he wanted to present it at, would actually read a little bit better. I think he got most of the way there. I think there's quite a few things that are still being left up to the viewer's interpretation in terms of what's going on. But there's some quite nice elements, like in the corner, he's got the little seating area with the barrel, and there's some things on the table, and little wanted signs, and all these different sections. If you took these as individual elements, they're really quite strong. It's when you put them into context of the whole scene that sometimes the room can look a little bit empty.
Yeah, well, I discussed this with him whilst he was working on it, and for me, it's just all very clean. I just would have expected some of the elements of this to be a lot more distressed.
Yeah, that's that discussion that we were actually having yesterday about the understanding of material properties, and the first years I'll probably laugh when I say dirt, debris, and decay as a subject matter is actually understanding exactly how materials wear down over time. And
a triumvirate you stole from me, you beggar.
Yeah, it's that part of the learning process for any type of prop or environment is that not only translating what the material properties are, is it shiny, is it reflective, is it dull, is it been scratched, whatever it is, but also how does it naturally wear over time is really important. So.
Yeah, it is really important, even just from a games technology perspective, understanding just how to do that quickly, just by throwing decals and similar processes around can make a massive difference. It doesn't have to take forever to get that effect, and it doesn't have to be based in the textures themselves. And I think that's largely what this is lacking. It's just lacking that aging. It looks, I can almost imagine a group of set designers going in and actually doing the initial construct, then going in and weathering it by hand. And it has that feeling. It's just the first pass.
Yeah. Again, go on.
I was going to say, can I also mention about the capture? It looks like Jake just hit record and then moved his mouse around in his WASD. That there's no camera tracks. It's kind of like I'll hit record here, like this one, and then I'll just walk backwards or fly backwards.
There's almost like a jump at the start, isn't there?
Yeah, it's quite. And there's somewhere the mouse moves first, like when we're looking at the flag one. So it's not using camera tracks. It's just kind of having a look round, and it's very jarring. Like that one there, move the mouse down and then backwards. It's quite strange to see. It doesn't. It takes away a little bit from the environment for me.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that you kind of want to push at final year and as a graduate is that level of polish, not only on the assets and the textures, but also on how you show it off is really important as well.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, who we on? Oh, Connor is he did this really amazing
person.
I've forgotten what his name is now. From Game of Thrones.
Well, I kind of think Reek, but I can't remember his actual.
Yes,
but whatever his name is.
It's Reek from Game of Thrones, and it's Oh, I can't actually think. Of his
Greyjoy, something Greyjoy,
Yes.
but I can't remember his first name. It'll come to
Theon.
me.
Theon. Thank you.
Theon, there we go.
Yes, he did this Theon Greyjoy character. Now, he spent quite a long time at the very beginning on this, is looking at digital recreations, digital humans. How do you make sure that your sculpt of your character actually represents the real world person in terms of proportions? And then what we did, we moved on to where we've got the main form. It's looking like that character now, but you want it in this very particular art style. So we had these references of Dishonored, and he wanted to sort of translate a little bit of that Dishonored-y sort of blockiness into that likeness as well. So it was a really complex project of not only digital recreation, but also then digital recreation with stylization at the same time. And he did a great job, because when you look at it, you know it's Theon Greyjoy, and it has this sort of stylized look that he was going for. It matches some of the concepts that he was looking at, and there's some really nice complexity there in terms of the details on the armor and the way that it's modeled, and then putting it all together. If you go and read his sketchbook, hopefully he puts it on his portfolio. He does talk a little bit about how the hair didn't turn out how he wanted it. Did a couple of different iterations on different ways of doing the hair, and in the end, he couldn't get it exactly how he wanted it, so he just quickly sculpted some hair. So hopefully, for his portfolio piece, he'll probably go back to that hair and actually redo it, just to get that look and feel that he was aiming for in the first place.
Can I ask a question about this? But maybe it's just my imagination, but the head on the grey T-pose render, the head seems too small, and it seems to be the correct size on everything else. Is it just my imagination, or is that actually the thing that got tweaked after the fact?
It might have been that screenshot was from an early part of his sketchbook, so it might have been part of the iteration where the process was looking at the scale of the head. So that's yeah, exactly. Good point that he actually tweaked and iterated over time. So Connor, his art station's up there on the screen. Definitely worth going to have a look at his art station, keeping an eye on, because he keeps improving each character he does, and getting better and better in terms of that sculpting process. And no doubt we'll see him in industry very soon.
My phone's going mad. We'll move on. Shush, phone.
And then I think Joe's the last one we've put in here, because just to make sure we keep it to the hour. Now, Joe, we know you've seen, we got another sneak peek of this in Advanced 3D when we clicked on his portfolio, and it was part of just like Kyle, it helped him get third prize in Game Republic Student Showcase art category. But he did this sort of snowy forest landscape, which had this God of War sort of aesthetic to it, looking at how they create some of their pieces. And he did an amazing job of putting this all together. There's some things that stand out as not quite right. Like, we all agree that the trees are a little bit
janky.
Yeah, janky is probably the right word. They don't quite look right. The weight of the tent is a little bit too heavy and too thick, and doesn't look right. And I've separated them out so you can see them. That staircase and those materials,
yeah,
those are industry ready. There is literally, you look at those and you go, yes, you could see that could just slot into God of War, and it wouldn't look out of place.
And again, Joe's really got exceptionally good at lighting and just general presentation. He's got so good at it now. He's been putting tutorials for lighting up on LinkedIn. He's got an eye for this. So anything that we're criticizing here is easily fixed.
Yeah,
he's definitely going places.
And I think when we talk about advanced viz in particular, and we talked about at the beginning that how important the sketchbook was, and the process and the thought behind everything. Joe's sketchbook was second to none. He had dotted every I and crossed every T in terms of how do you make a decision, and how do you make from materials to choice to backing it up with research that actually if we look at industry, this person says this is the way that you do it, but actually this person over here said you do it this way. So I've taken both, I've merged them together. So he actually did a really great job of putting together a sketchbook that actually demonstrated not only artistic intent, but also the academic rigor of what was the process that you did to actually create it. So that's a nice little snippet of some of the submissions this year to Advanced Viz. Hopefully anyone second year who's looking gets a little bit better idea about what that module entails, and anyone that's looking from potentially wanting to come on the course, that's the sort of level right now that our final years are producing. Now that I want to stress the right now, because
we should go back 4 years and show what it was like 4 years ago.
Yeah,
five years from their final year.
Did we start off this entire video with what a game's going to look like in X number of years? But
exactly,
yeah,
so,
everything evolves.
Because we've just seen the release of like the announcement of Unreal Engine 5. We're starting to get PlayStation 5, Xbox One, and Series X announcements. The next generation is coming through. So the work that our final years are producing now is demonstrating really strong junior artist, junior developer sort of levels of now. In 5 years' time, that expectation is going to go up. So it's continually evolving and continually sort of improving. So hopefully next year when we do this same stream but with the next cohort, we'll see that continued development. And as Muzzy says, there's some very talented artists coming through the program right now, and hopefully in a few years' time, just like Muzzy is here, they'll be coming to look at the first years that are in final year.
Cool. Thank you very much, Matt. That was quite an interesting tour of. I've not seen some of that work.
You finished exactly 3 minutes before our next meeting.
3 minutes before.
Well done.
So we'll be back next week with something we haven't thought of yet. Don't think.
suggestions in the comments or something like that.
We'll be back next week. And is there anything else we want to add before we sign out?
I don't think so. No, other than well done to our final years. This because we are now at home. This might be the last time we see you for a while until graduation of whatever form it takes occurs. So have a great summer and good luck with the job hunt.
Yeah.
Well, can I do one thing? I know we've got to go. But we were actually discussing this, and again, if there's any second years or I guess first years as well watching, there's still time to start thinking about next year's modules and preparing for those, and maybe that in the future video we'll talk more about that.
Good idea.
Yeah, so it's a good subject for a couple of weeks is prepping for next year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Yeah.